Hey, welcome back to another plant pair video. Today I want to talk about the importance of effort in your training. So I'm going to be blunt here. If you've been working out for a while and you're not seeing the muscle growth you want, the truth is this: you're probably not training hard enough. And I know that's not what people want to hear. Everyone wants some secret program, some hack, some magic exercise, or thinks just by adding set after set that they're going to grow. But the reality is, if you're not pushing your sets close enough to failure, if you're not putting in that high level of effort, you're leaving a ton of results on the table. By the end of this, I want you to be able to look at your training and know if effort is the missing piece for you in your progress. And realize if you dial this in, if you learn to push yourself, that's when the gains start to really happen. So let's start with this question. What does training hard even mean? Because a lot of people think that training hard, but in reality, they're just fooling themselves. A true hard set means you're pushing yourself to the point where you cannot complete another rep with good form. That's what we call failure. Now, you don't always have to take every set to failure, but you have to be consistently training close to it if you want to grow. Think about the rate of perceived exertion, or RPE scale for short. RPE 10 means absolute max effort. You couldn't do another rep even if your life depended on it. RPE 9 means you had maybe one rep left in the tank. RPE 8 means maybe two left. And what do most people do? Well, to me, they're hanging out at RPE 5 or so for most of their training. They're finishing their sets while they still have 4 or 5 reps in the tank, sometimes more. And here's the thing. Those last few reps, the ones that feel slow, the ones that burn, the ones you're grinding, those are the reps that actually cause your muscles to grow. If you stop before you get there, you're cutting yourself off from the stimulus that you need. So if you're serious about building muscle, you have to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, let's talk about the science behind this, because I don't just want to give you motivation. I want you to understand why effort matters so much. Muscle growth comes down to 3 main things: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. And the biggest driver out of those is mechanical tension. Basically, how hard your muscle fibers are being forced to contract. There's something called the size principle of motor unit recruitment. Simply put, it basically means your body recruits muscle fibers in order. First, it uses the small, slow twitch fibers. These are endurance oriented, not very strong, not very big. And as the set goes on, those fibers fatigue. Your body brings in the larger, fast twitch fibers. These are the fibers that have the most potential for growth. But here's the catch. Those big fibers only get recruited when you're close to failure. If you stop your set as soon as you feel a little burn, you never actually reach the point where those growth-prone fibers get activated. That's why effort is the great equalizer. You can be lifting heavy weights, light weights, body weight movements. As long as you're pushing close to failure, you're going to stimulate growth. If you don't, you won't. There are countless studies showing that training close to failure, even with lighter weights, produces significant muscle growth. The common factor across all of them is intensity of effort, not the exact rep range or exercise selection. So why don't most people grow? Because they stop the sets too early. Here's what usually happens. A person starts their set, the first handful of reps are easy, fast, smooth. They get to that point where it starts to burn a little bit, breathing gets a little heavier. They might push out one more rep, maybe 2, and then they rack the weight or stop the set completely. But here's the truth. If those last reps still look the same as the beginning of the set, you weren't even close to failure. You left several reps in the tank. A real hard set looks completely different. The early reps move fairly easy, then midway through the set, you notice things slow down. By the last couple reps, the set seems to be moving in slow motion. You're straining and you're fighting to complete each rep. And then you get to that point where you're trying with everything you've got, your muscles are contracting as hard as they can, but the rep just isn't progressing anymore. That's true failure. And here's the thing, that last rep, even if it didn't move, it still counts. That's basically an isometric contraction. Your muscles are firing at max capacity. That's a huge growth stimulus. Now, I want to be clear here. Training hard does not mean training sloppy. There's a big difference between pushing to failure with good form and just letting your form break down. If you're doing push-ups, for example, and your hips sag to the floor and your range of motion cuts in half, that's not failure, that's just bad form. True failure means you kept perfect form, but you simply couldn't complete another rep. So effort should never come at the expense of safety. Push yourself, grind it out, but always keep technique tight. That's how you make progress long-term without getting injured. So how do you know if you're really training hard enough then? There's a couple ways just to test yourself. And to me, they're pretty obvious. But, watch the bar speed or your body if you're doing calisthenics. If your last couple of reps are still moving fast, you stop too soon. Another way you can check yourself is just ask yourself honestly, could I have done one more rep with good form? If the answer is yes, you weren't at failure. And a third way to know if you're training hard enough is just to simply pay attention to that grind. A true hard set has that slightly shaking, straining, slow motion feel at the end. If you never hit that, you might want to reevaluate your training a little bit. So at the end of the day, this comes down to mindset, honestly. Are you willing to push yourself to that uncomfortable place? Because building muscle is not complicated. You don't need fancy machines, perfect programs, or the latest trends. What you need is effort, consistency, and intensity. I've said this before. Every single set is an opportunity. You can either go through the motions or you can try and get the most out of the time. That's the difference between average results and great results. So don't overcomplicate it. Keep your training simple and then go into every workout with the mentality of giving your maximum effort. So let's bring it back full circle here. If you're not seeing muscle growth, chances are you're just not training hard enough. It's not just your genetics, it's not your program, it's not your supplements. It's the fact you're stopping short of failure. You're not recruiting all your muscle fibers, and you're not pushing your sets to that true high effort zone. So the next time you train, don't just go through the motions. Push yourself. Train hard. Take it to that next level. So that's it for today. I hope this was helpful in some way. If it was, hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.